I'll be honest, and it's a little bit of a confession.
Uh-oh, here it is.
I love seeing dogs eat, right? They just, when I'm seeing a dog eat, I'm like, man, look how happy he is, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is when you give your dog a treat and you see your dog eat, not only are you getting that dopamine from spending time with your dog, but it's almost like you're eating too, and you get that downstream dopamine. So there's like 2 dopamine hits going on at the same time without you actually eating the fatty food. You're like, it's like sort of a vicarious experience.
Yeah.
You're like living through that dog,
I feel
right?
that.
So that downstream dopamine can be very powerful, and that's why when your dog's coming up to you and they seem like they're like, I just need a treat, I need a treat. They don't need a treat, they need attention. And attention can come in a variety of forms. Doesn't need to be food.
Welcome to Care Experts, a podcast dedicated to empowering you with knowledge for your health and self-care. I'm Melissa, a broadcast journalist.
And I'm Selah, a former fitness coach and personal trainer.
Each week, we interview top wellness and medical specialists from across the country, addressing your questions, even those you might be afraid to ask.
From your fur baby's well-being to skincare secrets to honest talk about bigger health issues, get it straight from the expert.
Join us every Wednesday for insights that will guide you on your health journey.
From cosmetic to dental and vet to vision, this is Care Experts. Today's episode is so interesting to me.
Me too.
We are talking about how you can maintain a healthy weight for your dog.
Yeah.
How you can give them exercise routines,
Yeah.
nutrition for your dog to help them lose weight if they need to. I mean, both of us are very passionate about health and wellness, and I never thought about this for your dog.
For your dog, really? I mean, well,
Yes.
I have a dog.
Right.
We've talked about this before, Rocky. And Rocky's weight doesn't fluctuate too much, but I have noticed that sometimes somebody sneaks him extra treats.
Uh-oh.
And I'm not so sure that's a good thing. So I'm so glad that we have Dr. Courtney Campbell, who is a board-certified veterinarian, joining us today. He's going to answer all of our questions about helping you help your dog maintain a healthy weight. Let's bring him in.
I'm so excited.
too. Selah, I know you're so excited just as I am because we're getting to talk about dogs again.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have Dr. Courtney Campbell in the house. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is outstanding. It's something I've been looking forward to literally all week. So,
that makes us
This
feel
is
so
great, yes.
special.
Amazing.
So for our audience, he is a doctor of veterinary medicine. He has a degree in that and is a diplomate of the American College of Veterinary Surgeons. You were board certified in 2019. That's amazing.
Thank you.
He is a veterinary medical correspondent. Tell me more about that.
Well, it just involves, correspondence involves taking complicated news and information, right? You hear some pet-related news, and then you boil it and distill it down into easily understandable facts. Because, listen, pets have their own language. Medicine is its own language. And we just want it to be plain English language,
So
right?
you speak 3
Yeah, there we
you
go,
speak
right?
Pet
There you go.
language.
There we
right?
go.
TV language,
There we go.
right? That's
Just got to break it
and
down.
English.
Yeah.
And
All
you're
of it.
simplifying it for where are you corresponding?
Well, I've had the pleasure of being on shows like The Doctors, Rachel Ray, Boris and Nicole Show, The Talk, The Real, right? And so even on WebMD, right? So there's this appetite, and this is the most exciting part for me. There's this appetite and this thirst for pet-related information, right? Pet parents
Absolutely.
at home, they want to know, right? And because of that, they just, people just eat it up. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to serve them and just gonna keep eating it up because
Here's my plate.
Right, exactly. Like that, the fact that people want to know means it's coming out of a place of love.
And
know?
you have a podcast too.
I do have a podcast called Anything Pawsible, and this is where we just
Wait
Yeah,
a minute.
yeah,
Is it
absolutely.
PAWS?
Yeah, of course. It's PAW.
I love
You had
that.
to do
We
it.
love a good pun.
There we go, right?
He's very punny.
I'm very punny. But we just explore the wonderful world of pet news information and like what's happening out there in terms of pets and people having fun. So that's what the podcast is about. Because here's the thing, you mentioned that I'm a surgeon, right? And so during that time, you got to get really focused, right? And you have to sort of block out the outside world. But here's the thing, there's so many exciting things happening in the outside world that you miss. So this podcast really for me was reconnecting with what I love and that bond and that connection I have with veterinary medicine. So
Where did that love for veterinary medicine come from?
you know what? I grew up in the woods in Connecticut, right?
Really?
Yeah, I grew up in the woods in Connecticut. And the one phrase you didn't want to say in my household growing up is, I'm bored. Because if you said that, you had so many things that your parents were going to give.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
bored? Oh, okay.
Let
I've
me
got a
give you
few
a sense.
things.
That's mine too.
Right.
Yeah.
So my escape was just go outside. And when I went outside, there was a whole world out there to explore, flipping rocks over and stuff like that. So I like to tell people I was raised by wolves, but that's not true. That's not true. It was
Clearly.
more raccoons, black bears, opossums, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where I developed that love. It's like just exploring the woods. And then I got my first dog, and the rest is history. Yeah.
What kind of dog did you get?
You know, when I was growing up, you know, we, of course, rescued a dog from the shelter. And at the time, there were just dogs in the shelter. But now there are breed-specific rescues that I didn't have, right?
know.
French Bulldog rescue, German
Yeah.
Shepherd rescue, a Golden Retriever rescue. We didn't have that growing up.
No.
It was just the rescue.
That's
yeah,
it.
that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right?
Get what you get. You don't throw a fit.
Right.
Yeah.
So my first dog was a lab mix. It had white paws, sort of white, what I call stockings or socks that came up, and this hair coat changed from white to yellow. It was just, it was outstanding.
What'd you name that baby of yours?
My first dog was called, my first dog I named Fiola, but then my second dog I named him Twitcher. And the reason why I named my dog Twitcher, because when Twitcher would dream, I mean, his whole body would just convulse, right?
my
And because I was young, I didn't know that dogs had
That's a
dreams.
normal-
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and who would, you know, a 10-year-old child, they're not thinking like, oh, dogs dream too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Twitcher would dream, hopefully, about chasing a ball or something
Yeah.
like that.
Hopefully
So
they're
something,
good
right? And
dreams.
he would like whine. I was like, wow, look at how deep those dreams are. You know what I mean? So I always think that they were fun dreams, and then not nightmares, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
not, of course not.
Exactly.
So today we're going to be talking about helping your dog maintain a healthy weight and
Yes.
what the impact of that is on your dog's overall health.
Sure.
So who better to talk to than Dr.
Right.
Courtney Campbell, because
Yes.
you know all about this.
And I have to say, as someone who doesn't currently, I did grow up with dogs, but I don't own a dog right now.
She has 3 kids.
I
Oh.
that's
3
enough.
boys.
yeah, I was about to
gonna
say,
boys. She's
your
handling
plate
a lot.
is full.
It's full.
Yeah.
Maybe in like 10 years.
There we go.
We could go down that road.
yeah.
But yeah, I didn't realize how important. I'm so curious. I know for humans, obviously, it's important for health reasons. So it's same with dogs,
Oh my
right?
gosh, yeah. When you say important for health reasons, I just want to double underline that and highlight that because it's so critical what you said. The best asset you can give to your pet is their health, right? And I think as a pet parent, there are 2 things, right? There are 2 main responsibilities we want to impart in our pets. We want to keep them healthy and happy. And if you keep them at a healthy weight, you accomplish both, right? If they're at a healthy weight, they're a lower chance for diabetes, lower chance for a shortened lifespan. They simply live longer, lower chance for feeling pain, osteoarthritis-associated pain. For those smush-face breeds like the French Bulldogs, Pugs,
Yeah.
Bulldogs, they can breathe better if they're not obese, right? So there's a host of things from cardiac disease. I mean, there's a host of things that help pets if they maintain a healthy weight, right? And so the reality is, though, what's the magic about veterinary medicine. This is the magic, is that it affects you too, right? So when we talk about veterinary medicine, we're never talking about the pet in isolation. We're always talking about the bond. So if you keep your pet at a healthy weight and you get a chance to walk your pet, guess what's happening for you too? You're getting healthy as well. So you can actually, by maintaining pets' health and maintaining a healthy weight, it helps keep you healthy as well.
So it's like an overall quality of life for the whole home.
There
Yeah.
we go.
The whole household. I love
for
that.
the entire family.
How
Yeah.
do you know what a healthy weight is for your specific pet baby?
And let's be honest, right? One of the greatest things about our dog and cat family is that there's incredible diversity, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at a Chihuahua and a Great Dane, you're like, are those
They
the
are
same
not the same.
species, right?
Yeah.
But they are, and so that we know that there's an incredible diversity, but sometimes that can make things complicated, right? In how do I know if my pet's at a healthy weight? I will say, we usually use something called a body condition score. That's the scale, or BCS as it's known, right? And it's a scale. It goes anywhere from 1 to 9. There's another scale that goes from 1 to 5, but let's just use the 1 to 9.
Okay.
1, emaciated, too skinny.
Okay.
9, obese, right? Morbidly obese, right?
Okay.
And so we definitely don't want 1 or 9. Ideal is 4 to 5. Now, if you're at home, right, and you're like, let's say you're watching
that
us,
mean?
right?
I
If
don't
you're
get
watching
it.
us, you go like, how do I even know?
How do I measure
Yeah,
that?
how do I
Is
even
it
measure?
like BMI?
It is a little bit like BMI. As a veterinarian, I will use the BCS score, body condition score. I'll also use something called the muscle condition score. But let's just talk about BCS right now.
Okay.
If you're at home, right, and you're like, I want to know, they say 4 to 5 is ideal, but how do I know that? I want you to do 3 main things. 1, get a look over the top of your dog, right? What I call the aerial view, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Second, get a profile view from the side.
I'm visualizing
Yes,
this
right
now.
You're
I'm
like,
taking
you're
notes.
yeah, exactly. You're like, your dog's in between your legs. You're getting that aerial view.
Okay.
Then get a profile view. Look at them from the side.
Okay.
And then third, put your hands on them, right?
Okay.
So number 1, what are you looking for the aerial view? Right after their ribs end, their waist should come in a little bit.
Okay.
They should have a waist. It shouldn't just go from ribs straight back. Right?
Okay.
That's the aerial view.
Okay.
From the side of that profile view, they should have what's called an abdominal tuck, meaning from their chest, it should just tuck up slightly, right? It shouldn't go from their chest straight back into their belly, right?
Okay.
And cats are famous for this, what we call Swiffer cats, meaning their tummy just drags along the ground and they Swiffer up all the dust, right? We
that's
don't want
funny.
that. You don't want that.
that.
You don't want that.
Okay.
And then number 3, when you put your hands on them, think about if you're kneading dough, just take your fingertips and just push in just ever so slightly. If you push in and you can't feel ribs, they're a little bit overweight.
Okay.
But if you put your hands on them and instantly you feel ribs, they're a little bit underweight. Right?
Okay.
So aerial view, profile view, and then most importantly, just a little bit of kneading around the ribs. If you can, just with slight pressure, if you can feel ribs, they're ideal.
So you're saying that we're not necessarily looking for a number on the scale the way that we would look at it. It's more of doing the BCS.
Yeah, so this is great. So those 3 things, right? Aerial, profile, and putting your hands on it. If you feel like, okay, my dog is a waist, he's got a little bit of an abdominal tuck, and I can feel ribs with slight pressure, I'm probably gonna be in great shape. However, I would just confirm with your veterinarian and say, hey, what's my dog's BCS? And if your veterinarian says, oh, I'd say it's ideal, it's like 4 to 5, you're spot on. That's right.
I'm
Right?
totally doing this the next
Yeah,
time. They're like, how do you know about
Yeah, exactly,
BCS?
exactly.
know.
Your-
Melissa.
Your veterinarian will be so impressed. This is better than water
I'm gonna
cooler
credit
stuff,
you.
right?
I'm gonna credit
Yeah.
you. I'm like, Dr. Campbell told me, so guys.
Yeah, such a great. So you don't weigh dogs ever at the
No, they
veterinary?
weigh them.
You
Or they do?
absolutely
Okay, okay.
can, right? So but I think when we talk about BCS, right, or body condition score, when I look at muscle condition score, meaning your dog can have a great body condition score, but they're losing muscle from certain medical conditions. And I mainly feel the head, the neck, the shoulders, and then right above the pelvis. And I feel for that muscle. That's what your veterinarian's gonna do. They're gonna do a muscle condition score. Because you can have a BCS or a body condition score of 5, but then your dog's losing muscle, and that should tell you something different. So what I will say is, number 1, weight is important, but it's not the only thing. And just within one breed, right? You could think, let's say, a golden retriever. You could have a smallish golden retriever who weighs a certain amount, let's say 50 pounds, but then you could have some of those golden retrievers who come out with just shredded muscle, and they weigh 70 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So weight's important, but it's not the only thing.
That's
I would say
right.
BCS overall.
Similar to humans, actually.
Absolutely.
So good. This is such
Very.
vital information. So what are some of the common causes of weight gain in dogs?
Well, they're not opening the refrigerator, right, and serving themselves some mashed
No, they're
potatoes,
not.
right? They're
Right.
not.
Well,
doing-
some of them
are
can.
right.
Have
We'll
you
talk
been
about
on
that.
TikTok?
We'll
I
talk about that
mean,
later. Some of them
that's true.
are opening the refrigerator,
but mostly not.
but mostly not, right? And so usually there is an issue, and let's just call a spade. It's overeating and sort of under-exercising, right?
Right.
But there are certain genes, just like there's tremendous diversity in our genetic makeup, same thing with dogs. Like, for example, they identified a certain gene specifically in Labradors called the opiomelanocortin gene. And this gene, basically, in the most simplest terms, it doesn't tell dogs when they're full. So it's almost like they're programmed to just act like they're hungry all the time. Like when your lab comes, now they've identified this gene in Labradors, but there's still early research that could identify this gene in other dogs. But I would say that's generally not the issue. The issue is,
It's us. I
Yes,
know you're
we're gonna-
The humans.
yes,
It's us
these,
giving-
these foods are calorically dense. So here's what I will say. Number 1, look at how much you're feeding your dog. These are, when you're feeding your dog, usually what they're estimating is for these dogs who are super active.
Okay.
If your dog's a couch potato, they don't need that much energy, right?
Okay.
And so I would definitely dial that back.
Okay.
However, you also don't want to underfeed your dog. Let's say they said, your dog needs 2 cups of food. And you say, well, all right, well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna give them 1 cup of food. You have to be careful about that because although you're lowering the energy, you're also lowering the vitamins, minerals,
Right, the
and important
nutrients,
nutrients.
yeah.
So this is why, and the best way to solve that is this. Use a weight management diet. Because what the weight management diet will do is it'll lower the energy, but keep the vitamins, minerals,
Right.
and important micronutrients at the top. So, number one, if my dog's overweight, you jump to your BCS, right? You go, okay, we got a BCS problem.
Right.
What's the second thing to do? Talk to your veterinarian about getting on a plan, and then also think about exercise. Have I been exercising my dog? If I'm being really honest with myself, or have I been busy and haven't been able to take him for a walk? And what that'll do, and of course the weight too. I like what you
Yes.
said about the weight, but those are the 3, I think, key steps. That BCS, working with your veterinarian, and then exercise. I think those will be the 3 key steps to getting healthy.
And the weight management program, is it like Weight Watchers for dogs? Like you're like
They
minimizing
get
the
points, right? There's
calories.
points and calories.
That's
No
the 2
cheesecake,
points,
right?
Rocky.
Yeah.
Right? No cheesecake.
No more treats for you.
Yeah, but seriously, you have to factor the treats into the overall caloric intake, right? If you say,
Right.
I feed my dog this amount, but then I add a bunch of boiled chicken, or I give my dog some salami, or my 5-year-old is slipping them a little bit of treats underneath the
Yes.
table, that all has to be factored in.
Okay, they got to track those points.
Yes.
Something that I want to go back to pretty quickly is just the fact that as your dog gets older and they become less active,
Sure.
are you as a pet owner supposed to alter how you're feeding them and what you're feeding them in order to accommodate that change?
Well, just like humans, right? It's like when we were
Right.
20s, right? We could eat whatever we want.
And
We
burn
stay
it all
burn
in
it
a
off. We
day.
stay shredded. We wake up in the morning. We're like, I didn't eat anything, right?
Yes.
Well, and then as we get older, that's not the case.
Yeah,
No,
no.
yeah.
Same thing in animals too, and same thing in dogs and cats too, is that their metabolism changes as they get older, right? And so it's so critical to have a conversation, right, with a veterinary medical professional, your veterinarian, and say, all right, my dog's turning 8, my dog's turning 9 or 10. Should I be transitioning to an older dog food, a geriatric formula food for my dog, because that will potentially lower energy requirements. Also, if your dog has another condition, let's say they have arthritis and they can't move as much, they can't do as much exercise. Exactly. They will need less energy. And so there's protein changes there, there's micronutrient changes in these geriatric formulas for diets, and then also they'll decrease energy. So, and that is all happening inside the body, right? And so you may not realize it, but your dog, as they get older, their metabolic needs definitely change.
What are some indicators of those changes that we can look for? Because as you said,
Sure.
they can't talk to us in words.
Right.
What should we be looking for?
Well, if you're at home and you're thinking, all right, my dog's metabolic needs are changing. Number one, you definitely should be doing a BCS at least once a week or at least once a month.
Oh,
Yeah, just so that you can track changes and journal it. 2, used to be able to old school, right? Keep a journaling of like how much activity, how much. Now there's so many new activity monitors for dogs
apps
and
and
apps and
Of
things.
course there
I would
are.
say leverage technology, right?
Okay,
And so
that's
you're
smart, yeah.
using technology to let you know, like, all right, when I'm not at home, this is how much my dog is walking. When I am at home, this is how much my dog is walking. I've noticed that when I'm at work, my dog only gets a few steps in during
So
the
you're
day.
counting the doggy steps.
You're
my
yeah,
God.
exactly. Yes.
I
It's
count
like-
my steps. That's
there you go,
amazing.
right? We've all got our watches, right?
Yes.
That help to count our steps. So I'd say these are some of the changes that you can observe at home and just say, all right, my dog's either gaining weight, has a change in BCS, that muscle condition score I mentioned, right? Head, neck, and then around the shoulder blades, and then around the pelvis. If you see your dog losing muscle, that's another metabolic change. And then finally, an activity monitor. That's a great way to
Yeah.
figure out how much activity is my dog actually getting.
And how much should you incorporate? Like, should you come home from work and do a 20-minute walk, or how long? Does it depend on the dog?
It does depend on the dog, but I
Okay.
will say, just as a general rule, right? I always feel like every dog should be able to do a 20-minute walk twice a day. right? At least. If your dog can't do that, they are either in a special circumstance or you need to work with your veterinarian and say, hey, is my dog overweight? Is my dog painful? What's going on? How can I work up to a 20-minute walk twice a day? Now, let's be clear. There are certain dogs, certain breeds who need way more than that, right? Your German short-haired pointers, your Belgian Malinois, your like life of the party social dogs, right? They want to be everywhere. Those dogs need more, and they're going to need time at a dog park, right? And so when you're thinking about activity, you say, this is so complicated. Like, how do I simplify it? Here's a really simple breakdown. Okay. You need one sit exercise, one walk exercise, and one run exercise. The sit exercises are for those rainy days, right? And these are food dispensing toys, or these are chew toys, these are obedience training. These are low impact indoor activity that keeps your dog's mind stimulated. That's the sit exercise. The walk exercise, literally that's what it means. Go for a walk, go for a hike. Sometimes walking on soft sand on the beach makes them work 20% harder, right? So they burn more calories. And then finally, the run exercise. That's where you're throwing the ball, the frisbee, they're swimming, they're at the dog park chasing other dogs. And so if you say, in my arsenal with my dog, I have opportunity to bond with them through a sit, a walk, and a run exercise, you're golden.
This is
that's
so
so
good,
great.
right?
Yes.
Something that I was thinking about when it comes to managing a dog's weight is, let's say you've kind of fallen off of what you should have been doing, and you are now noticing, okay, my dog is clearly overweight. What are some of the long-term health issues that your dog can face if you don't intervene?
Well, very simply put, without intervention, an overweight dog simply lives a shorter lifespan. You just don't get enough time, right? We always want more time with our dogs, right?
Absolutely.
So, number one, that's number one. They're not going to live as long. Number two, your bond with them will be really upended. It'll be separated. Why? Because a lot of times they're not happy. They don't want to move. They don't want to do the things with you that you enjoy doing. So that's number 1 and 2. They don't live as long, the bond won't be good. But then 2, diabetes is certainly higher on the list. Respiratory issues is high on the list. And certainly osteoarthritis-associated pain, meaning if I'm heavier and I have joint issues, it's going to feel bad, right?
Even worse,
So it's going to feel even worse, right? So these are things that I would say, if your dog is overweight, there are a host of reasons why you should do everything in your power to see if you can get that back down to a nice, healthy weight.
One thing I thought about is when I first moved to LA, one of my side actor jobs was running with people's dogs. Like they wanted me to take them on runs. I was a personal trainer.
Right.
So is that something, how can you incorporate your fitness and your exercise with your dog's exercise?
That's awesome. I like that question.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. And even a major organization like American Heart Association, they have found that people who have heart conditions, coronary conditions, if they adopted a dog, they would live longer just by having that dog. Now, clearly, it's just not just by having the dog. It's that you've got to get out and exercise and walk and move.
Right.
And so the reality is to incorporate that, always check with your doctor and say, hey, listen, I'm an avid runner. Can I take my pug on he's like, well, we got to work up to this, right? So what I would say for sure is if you're an avid exerciser, the best way to incorporate exercise in your dog is a slow, regimented plan. You don't want to just go from 0 to 60 off the couch and have them be weekend warriors because dogs can get injured too.
Wow.
But it can be mutually beneficial once you get to that point where you can cross-train or do yoga or run with your dog.
With your dog.
Yes, if you can be on the beach with your dog, or you can be out in the backyard with your dog, and then you can say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go for a walk, but part of that walk, we're going to jog. Or we're going to do some obedience training, or we're going to do some yoga together, right? It's about spending time together and that bond. But the most important thing is dogs tend to make things more fun, right?
Yeah,
and so if you're
true.
exercising and you're doing it with your dog, that's part of the fun too.
That's so. Do dogs do yoga? Is this a thing, doggy yoga?
Doga? Man, Doga
Wait,
is...
are
yeah.
you serious?
Of course,
Oh, yes.
it's called Doga.
Yeah,
Oh,
of
yes.
course.
Doga is a real thing, and it's been around for longer than you would imagine. And all I would say
my
is look it
gosh.
up because it's...
Have you done
I've never
Doga,
done
Dr.
I've never done
Campbell?
Doga, but people have expanded, right? You've now I'm based in Santa Barbara now, but you've certainly seen goat yoga.
I was just
you've
gonna
seen
say, I've seen it.
Yeah.
That's
cat
crazy.
yoga.
I have
I've
not. No,
not
I
seen
have
that.
not seen cat yoga,
Right,
but go on.
I'm actually nervous about what other animals are going to add to yoga.
True.
Right?
Oh
Yeah,
my
so I'm just my eyes are peeled to see what will be the next version of that.
Doga.
But, yes.
So that's new to me, but I've also heard there is dog exercise equipment. Is this
Oh.
equipment that's for the dogs to use?
there's
Or you to use with the dog. Like,
Well, obviously. Well, wait.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
is it
Tell us,
human
Dr.
use or is
Campbell.
it-
Like, how does this
It's
work?
pretty rare, but there are people who will buy their dogs treadmills and like.
Oh, I've seen those.
Yes,
okay, I have
yes.
not seen that.
Yeah, and I would say that is, I mean, if that's the only alternative, but I would much prefer if you are going to exercise with your dog, I prefer you do it with your dog.
Yeah.
I prefer you don't just use a treadmill sort of ad libitum because who knows how much you don't want to overdo a good thing,
Sure.
right? And so, and if the dog's not a fan of it, and then cats, don't even get me started on cats if they even go walk on treadmills. So my point is this, is like, yes, there's pet exercise equipment, but it really should be like the finals.
natural.
Yeah.
People are doing that for the gram. Let's be real.
No, we
If it don't do it for the gram, it didn't happen. Yeah.
exactly.
That's also true. You got to record it. You
Gotta record it.
So we touched on this a little bit earlier, Dr. Campbell, and it was just the nutritional strategies and establishing a healthy weight and managing it long term. How do you know the proper portions for your dog and creating that, I guess, a meal plan that works to maintain that healthy weight?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, sometimes you say, Doc, this is the most common thing I hear. Doc, I swear, I'm not giving him that much food. And you know what I say? I say, I believe you, but define how much. And so when they say, oh, I'm only giving them a cup of food, you find out it's one of those 7-Eleven, like big Slurpee cups, you know what I mean?
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, not
So-
like a cup, a
measured
measured
cup.
yeah, and I'm
cup.
saying, oh yeah, you're only giving me a cup, and I said, well, how big is the cup? And they pull out like this.
A
It's
big
like,
gulp?
okay,
And
yeah,
you're
you're
like,
like, no,
oh
that's
my God.
not a cup of food. So
Yeah.
if number
my
one, if
gosh.
you aren't sure that how much you're giving, you know, number one, you really want to be accurate with the amount that you're giving. I remember having a client who said to me, got really detailed in this, and nobody at home needs to do this, but he would actually count the amount of kibble that he's
Stop
giving
it.
his cat. So if it was 30 today, next day it would be 29, next day it would be 28, because you don't, if you're overfeeding, right? Let's say you're overfeeding, you don't just want to go from a cup to half a cup. You don't want to make that drastic of a
Oh,
change.
that's good. Thank
You
you
want
for
to
pointing
go
that
very
out.
slowly because there's actually a medical condition called hepatic lipidosis that cats can get where they go, oh, I'm starving, you're not giving me any food. They mobilize all that fat starts to circulate, it goes right to their liver. And so that's bad, right?
Okay.
So hepatic lipidosis is a big no-no, particularly in cats, rare in dogs, but really in cats you want to be careful. So he was actually counting the kibble, right?
Like piece by
yeah,
piece.
piece by piece. You don't need to do that. Number
Okay.
one, first
Okay.
step, make sure when it says a cup, you're really giving a cup.
A measured one cup. Okay.
Number two, be honest about the exercise.
Okay.
Is my pet getting the most exercise, right? And if you're honest about the measuring cup and the exercise, and you're saying, I'm doing the best I can, then number three, talk about overweight management diets, right? Because again, they're going to increase. Some of these diets have fiber, right, which is make your pet feel more full, longer. They're going to lower the energy requirement, right? But they're going to keep the nutrients high,
Right.
So that would be the 3-step process. Make sure you're right about your measurement. Make sure you're right about your exercise, and then number 3, think about a diet or weight management.
And
food.
don't like sneak. I often see, children sneaking treats, or they're going under the table and eating whatever they drop.
Whatever was wrong.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness! You know I can't tell you how many times that I find out like, oh, I'm just giving my dog this much food, but then they've got a piece of chicken here,
Yeah.
they've got treats there,
You see the face I'm making
Yes.
because we're all
how do you
guilty
not
of
do
it.
counter surfers, right? They're just grabbing everything.
And it's not every day, but yeah.
How do you avoid that?
Well, you definitely have to be.
Stop.
Yeah, you definitely have to be.
just have to
you
make
have to
sure
be
they're not-
disciplined about it
Okay.
because it's something I call downstream dopamine. Now, here's the concept of downstream dopamine. When we eat, fatty foods or unhealthy foods, we get a little bit of a dopamine boost, right? We get a big juicy cheeseburger, whatever it is. You get a little dopamine boost. When you spend time with your pet, you also get a dopamine boost. So, I'll be honest, and it's a little bit of a confession.
Uh-oh, here it is.
I love seeing dogs eat, right? They just, when I'm seeing a dog eat, I'm like, man, look how happy he is, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is when you give your dog a treat and you see your dog eat, not only are you getting that dopamine from spending time with your dog, but it's almost like you're eating too, and you get that downstream dopamine. So there's like 2 dopamine hits going on at the same time without you actually eating the fatty food. You're like, it's like sort of a vicarious experience.
Yeah.
You're like living through that dog,
I feel
right?
that.
So that downstream dopamine can be very powerful, and that's why when your dog's coming up to you and they seem like they're like, I just need a treat, I need a treat. They don't need a treat, they need attention. And attention can come in a variety of forms. Doesn't need to be food.
I have a confession.
Let's
too.
hear your
Dr.
confession,
Campbell.
right?
No, it's not my. Well, it's my confession, but it's about my husband. So, husband, if you're
Okay,
listening,
yes.
okay. So
Blame it
we-
on the husband, yeah.
No, because he and our dog have what I consider to be like a codependent relationship.
Okay.
And literally, our dog Rocky, who is a Chihuahua mix, we rescued him about 8 years ago or so, will come up to him regularly at the same time every day, begging for a milk bone, right? Or some kind of a treat, right? And he has his food that has been set out.
Right.
He sees it go in the bowl, ignores that, and is jumping on my husband's leg. So you know what time this is? This is, we've just picked the kid up from carpool.
Okay.
This
Right.
is, my husband's just finished his last business call, so now we're all together in the same room. He's like, oh, I know what you want. And Rocky's barking, he's jumping up the leg. So then what does my husband do? Gets the
Gives him
milk
the
bone,
treat.
even though his food is right
Yeah.
there.
Right.
And then Rocky has to sit in his lap and eat this
No
milk bone
way.
daily.
In his
Sometimes
lap.
twice. Yeah, and he won't eat it otherwise.
Right.
Did
And
he
I'm
still
like-
eat his food?
Eventually,
Okay.
but he knows that if he jumps on my husband's leg long enough and barks, that he will get that milk
So
bone.
how do you
and
get
he
out
He
of
wants his
that?
milk bone and he
Tell us,
wants to
Dr.
eat it
Campbell.
too. Yes.
Husband, listen up.
How do you
Well-
get
How
out
do
of
you
that
get out of
habit?
that
A couple of things. Number one is that if it's a calorie issue, by the way, that's hilarious just because your dog has this internal clock.
He really
right?
does.
He's like knows like to the T. He doesn't even need a watch. He just
Uh-uh.
knows exactly what's
Yeah.
happening. So well, classic conditioning. But I will say that if it's a calorie issue, then there are other healthy treats that you can give. You know, when I was growing up, for some reason, I have no idea why. I'm not going to say every dog would be like this, but he loved raw cauliflower. I would throw it in the air.
Cauliflower?
Yeah, he would throw it in the air,
So
and he would fly through the air and just grab it. And I think it was like the crunch of it. I could just feed him an entire head of cauliflower. I never did that, but he just loved it so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Not every dog's gonna like cauliflower, right?
Right.
But my point is, carrots, apples, cauliflower, broccoli, little lean pieces of chicken can all be good substitutes for that
Okay.
milk bone if it's a calorie thing. But I'm also going to borrow a technique that a lot of veterinarians use in the exam room, and we'll apply it at home.
Okay.
And this technique is where when a pet comes in, they get 20 treats when they're there. You go, 20 treats, Dr. Campbell? That doesn't sound healthy.
Yeah.
Here's what I mean. You take one treat and you break it into 20 pieces. So when they walk in the door, they get a little piece. When they're on the exam table, they get a little piece. When you're talking with their pet parents, their dog gets a little piece, right? And so they don't get 20 treats. They get one treat that's broken into 20 pieces.
That's what they do
because-
on film sets too.
Yes, because ultimately, that's all your dog is looking for. It's just that little
little
burst,
tiny
just
bite.
a little bit.
And the
That's-
attention.
And the
Yeah,
attention,
the
that's what they really need. So, what you can do, right, if we're gonna apply it at home is, take that milk bone and break it in half, right? And now you're only giving half. And then maybe next week, give quarter. And that is what you're
That's a
and then
great
eventually
trick.
you can go with no milk bone, right? And
Thank
so
you, Dr. Campbell,
that's the key
for
right
this
there.
free advice.
Yes.
That's why you're the expert.
we
You're
go.
sitting in that
I know.
chair. This
Problem
is so good.
solved.
I'm really going to
Yeah,
apply
that's a
it.
great
Yeah,
I'm
let's
really gonna do it.
let's decrease the volume of treats.
Great tip.
Yeah. Okay, so now it's time for one of our favorite segments. It's
Uh-oh.
called Ask the Expert.
Uh-oh.
This is where
All
no,
right.
it's good. It's good. This is when our listeners, our viewers, people in the audience get to ask you, our expert,
All right.
questions that they have, but they do it anonymously because they do it through us.
Okay,
so
let's
here's
do
the
it.
first one.
Okay.
Are there any specific exercises or activities you recommend for senior dogs or those with mobility issues?
Yes, for senior dogs or dogs with mobility issues, I would definitely recommend a couple of things. Number one, potentially low impact exercise, so just walking. But how do you make walking more, how do you burn more calories just by walking? One technique is to find a beach or soft sand, in that they have to work harder against the soft sand. That's gonna be easier on their joints and less impactful on their joints. Or maybe grass that's a little tall, so they have to bend their knees a little bit. Swimming can be a very effective exercise, right? Now, I'm not talking about running and jumping off the dock kind of swimming, right? I'm talking easing into the water and getting a swim around a lake, or even in a swimming pool and come back out, working with a physical therapist. Yes, there are canine physical therapists, right? And they will have what's called underwater treadmills. Here's what's cool about an underwater treadmill. Dogs are walking with the water that's about chest height. They get the buoyancy from the water, but the resistance of having to move through that water, right? So those are at least 3 really good tips that I think are wonderful. And then for senior dogs, to help keep their mind stimulated, this falls into the sit category, and that's just simple obedience training, right? So you're at home, you're teaching them to sit, stand, walk, heel, right? Paw, roll over. All of these involve movement, but it's low impact movement. And people say, well,
Right.
Doc, my dog's a senior dog. Yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks,
here it
right?
is.
So,
Yeah.
so you can absolutely do that. But these are very low impact ways for dogs who have mobility issues to do that. And of course, there's a host of other apparatus, right? From dog wheelchairs to dog slings that can help your
right.
dog with mobility issues. But that, I would say, work with your veterinarian on that.
Yeah, that's great. There's not a lot of impact on the joints, but it's
Yes,
high
right,
for
and
the
it gives them
muscle.
that assistance because they want to move too, right? They want to move. Their whole life is movement, but they're just like, I can't. Is there a way that you can help me do that?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, this next person asked, what are some low-calorie, healthy treats I can give my dog during training or as rewards without sabotaging their weight management efforts?
Well, we got a chance to
We
talk
got
a little bit
of that,
about them,
yeah.
but certainly vegetables are wonderful, right? So everything from zucchini to cauliflower to apples to watermelon to little bits of unseasoned egg, right? You could try a little bit of scrambled egg that's unseasoned. You could try a little bit of boiled chicken. But then there's also weight management treats out there, right? So that's an option as well. And then if you are feeding your dog, let's say your dog's you say, wait, my dog has allergies. I can't just give them any kind of protein or any kind of carbohydrate. What do I do? Well, if your dog's in a specific prescription food and it comes in a wet formula, what you can do is take that wet formula and then section it and then bake it. And then now it's like a nice, hard, crispy treat, and you
that's
can
a
use their
great
regular
idea.
food as a treat.
Oh, you could probably even get like one of those molds, that has like in the shape of a
Yeah.
dog.
Oh
bone or
my
something
goodness,
like
right?
that.
They throw it in the air fryer. Oh my gosh, there we go.
Is this
Although-
what those treat places are all about? Like we have like doggy bakeries in LA.
Of course, you got the
Get out.
Oh, yeah.
Of course there's a
boutique, of
dog.
course,
Yeah,
yes.
boutique.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Right.
welcome in.
Are those healthy, or you want to stay clear? Like we.
Oh no, those boutiques can be really healthy.
Okay.
But if your dog has an allergy to, let's say, chicken allergy or a beef allergy, you definitely have to ask them and say, hey,
Oh, okay.
what's in this particular treat?
Oh, yeah,
and I'm
makes
sure
sense.
they make a bunch of hypoallergenic treats as well.
Yeah, totally. It's LA.
Okay, here's the next question. How can I'm only reading this way just because I deal with this too.
Okay.
How can I encourage my family members to stick to our dog's exercise and feeding plan, especially when it comes to avoiding table scraps or overfeeding?
Oh man,
It's
this
a
is so
common
tough.
problem.
It is a tough problem because really, what I love about that word, or what I love about that question rather, is I love the word family. Right? This is really a family affair. I heard a story where there was this young child who was watching the television, right? And he saw a dog in the television, and he turned to his mom and he said, Mom, when we get older, I want a pet too. And she said, well, what do you think Rufus is? And he was like, oh, Rufus is a pet. He just thought he was a furry member of the family, a furry four-legged member of the family. He didn't realize that the dog was a pet as well. And so that's the way we have to think about it, is that they are truly a species diverse family member, and everybody in the family has to be involved in this. And just give them the knowledge that by overfeeding our pets, we're not going to be able to spend as much time with them because they're not going to live as long. They're not going to be as happy. They're going to have a whole bunch of health consequences. And then also serve daily reminders. Help them, help your family with this too. Say, hey, here's a jar of treats that are weight management treats. If you want to slip him a cracker or a piece of salami or a chicken, stop and go to the jar, and then here's what. So you're helping them, right? Because now they don't feel like, what? I can't give my pet a treat because
this family member
treat, because that can also cause an issue with the connection as well when you tell them you can't do it. Most of the time when vets recommend you don't give people food, you know what people do? They go home and give people food. So they're looking for that connection, right? So give them different options.
Wait, y'all know that we're still doing it?
Yeah. How do you know
Yes.
Dr. Campbell.
Absolutely.
Okay, this last question is, how can I tell if my furry friend is just a lovable chunk or if I should be worried about their weight? And we kind of touched on this a little.
No doubt. But it's tough because when you're at home and let's just say you're just chilling, just Netflixing it out or whatever the case is, you're just relaxing, watching some TV. It's so important that you use that time. Use that time wisely. Glide your hands over your dog. Feel for any lumps or bumps. Learn how to do a home physical exam during that time, because that's when you're bonding with your dog. That's when you're getting acquainted. And of course, during that time, you could also do the BCS, right? So you're at home, you're looking over the top. Do they have a waist, right? Side. Do they have a tug? And then we're gonna get our fingers in and just knead it like dough. And we can. You guys remember this like this? Yeah, you guys should start seeing appointments. We're gonna set you up for seeing appointments.
We'll be your assistant.
Yeah, there we go. I like that. And so I think that's the best time. So that's the best way to figure out if they're a little bit chunky or just big boned.
Or that's what I was saying. Are some dogs just built differently? Yeah, like a little chunky pug or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And they're not overweight?
100%. So there are some really muscular dogs and you're just like, okay. And then there are dogs who are just a little bit on the skinnier side and they are what I call self-regulators, where they're at their football, they've only eaten half and they're like, no, that's enough. And they don't need. Right, exactly. I've never been a food regulator. Nope. Right. And so, then there's dogs that are still trying to lose their COVID weight, right? I mean, that's my excuse. I just say I'm really trying to lose my COVID weight. So that's the deal. So I think at the end of the day, it's about just using your tools and your veterinarians and your resources and just keep those right at your fingertip length.
This has been such great information. I love this conversation with you, Dr. Campbell.
I love it too.
Is there anything that we did not ask you or that we didn't touch on when it comes to helping your dog maintain a healthy weight that you'd like to share with our audience?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. But
covered it.
Well, now you asked all the right questions, but I think the most important thing is to remember that maintaining a healthy weight is not just good for your dog, it's good for you too. And I think emphasizing that point that we are inextricably linked to our pets and bonded to them, and that by keeping them healthy keeps you healthy as well. I think that's the key right there.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
How many dogs do you currently have?
I do not have any dogs right now. I know you're like, what? How is that possible? I do have a hamster. Her name is Quarantina, but I am in the market to adopt and rescue. So hopefully that will be soon. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll have to have you back,
of course,
so you can tell us about your new family.
Oh, let's do that. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I love Quarantine.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much. Me too.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell.
Thanks, Dr. Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of our growing community.
Stay tuned for new Care Expert episodes every Wednesday, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and YouTube. Hey there, don't leave yet. Just wanted to say, if you want to hear more about pet care, check out these episodes of Care Experts. Also, before you go, make sure you like and subscribe.